Welcome to the Printer Prop Shop. I'm Michael. So if you've been following my channel at all, I kind of have a format that I try to follow. Uh, this one's going off script. The reason is that I'm doing a Mystery Maker's design today, which is the Bobba Fett armor, but I'm doing it different. I'm doing a mishmash of universes, so Star Wars and Marvel universe. And what I'm doing is, and I want to give credit where credit's due, is I'm doing the helmet that I originally did a couple years ago, and it was Grizzly Mountain Designs. It was his COVID commander. I believe it was someone else. I think it sticks to someone else in canon for their helmet, but I thought it had a great Punisher look, and I'm a huge Punisher fan. So when I made it in the Punisher style and the color format. So that's what I'm doing over the next couple weeks. Is with Halloween around the corner, I'm making my costume and I'm going to make my wife's costume. And we're going to have kind of similar styles in the costumes, because she has her helmet, which I need to redo as well. And my helmet I need to redo because it got a little banged up in the move from California to South Carolina. The good thing is the base is all there, so it just needs some body work. I do need to print off some filler pieces and things like that, but you'll see. But ultimately, this video is about doing the Bobba Fett armor from Mystery Makers. So I'm going to give a little insight on what the helmet looks like right now. The reason is because I've already started working on it before I filmed this part, and luckily I did take some footage of it beforehand, kind of explaining what was wrong with it. So that's what we're going to get into today. I'll probably revisit to this costume making over the next couple of weeks, in between doing different projects. So it may be a little off topic or things like that, but it's just what I want to show. So without further ado, here we go. The paint's kind of cracked. It has been moved. When we moved here from California, they broke off the actual viewfinder that comes down, so I'm gonna have to replace that and just clean it up a bit. So let's jump into it. Here is a Mystery Maker's design from Marco. It's a gorgeous design. Even the parts print beautifully like they always do from Marco. He puts in tons of work on this, and it is patreon.com/mysterymakers. Go and support him, pick up his files. You won't be dissatisfied. So my first step was to go and get into Armorsmith. Now, if you don't have Armorsmith, I would highly suggest picking it up if you're going to do this sort of stuff. It's only around $30, I want to say. The downside is it only works on Windows, so if you're a Mac user, it's not going to work. And they have no plans to make it for Mac from the last I read and from the contact I've had with them. What it does do is it does work in a virtual machine on a Mac, such as Parallels, because I've ran it before, but Parallels gets pricey. I'm just going to tell you, over the years, Parallels gets pretty pricey. So my first step with Armorsmith was to go and measure out my chest. Now my avatar here hasn't been set up for my body, so don't think I look like this and look at the video and be like, that's not him. It's just, the only thing I had set up before was my head, because I was just doing helmets. So I did a rough estimate of my chest, and a couple of things with this is I probably won't lose weight in my chest over the next couple months, but it's a possibility, and I didn't want it to look wonky if I did, and I didn't want it to look too small and look like it wasn't really protecting anything and just kind of throwing my body. So I kind of split the difference and just kind of went with a happy medium to look on my chest, and it came out pretty darn good. I did it pretty close. I think even if I was to lose another 20 pounds over the next couple months, I would be just fine. And once again, I went into Cura and I printed these off vertically. Now, the reason I printed them off vertically is, for one, you'll get better scan lines going up, at least I do, rather than printing them like on the fronts where they'll curve out, and then on top of that you're going to get a bunch of support pieces, and it's going to be flat in the center pieces where it was on the build plate. It just came out much better. I did end up using a brim on here, And I've been using brims here lately. They're just making my parts stick a lot better. And here I started doing some cleanup. As you can see, they came out really well. The only thing that I had was, and I believe I looked through the files, I want to say there's a piece that Marco had in there that didn't have these slots on it. But for me, I'd already printed this out and sized it up before I checked. So I'm not sure if there is one in there or not, but I just used some styrene, really thin styrene. And you can pick this up at Hobby Lobby or just on Amazon. And I decided I was going to fill them in. Now, filling them in is pretty easy if you're using styrene. Styrene melts really easy. It melts better than PLA. So if you're ever going to do this, use styrene. Don't use really thick styrene. You could, but it's really kind of going to defeat your purpose of using this at all. So I started with the corners, just welding them down. And then once I got my corners done, because I wanted to get those corners done because it has a curve in that chest piece. And if I didn't start with the corners, it's going to bow out, and most likely with my luck, it's not going to cover the whole thing like I need it to. After I got the corners done, I started going over each side and getting those all welded down. And as you can see, it came out really well. I didn't have any issues with it at all. So I just wanted to take a minute here and show, I did fill in this little piece back here, but I'll show you on the camera down here. It's got a pretty big gap, and I could fill that in with wood filler, but it's going to take a lot, and most likely that much wood filler is probably just going to crack. So this is what I wanted to actually stop and kind of show you, was that why you should add a 3D printing pin. So a 3D printing pin, and I'll show it down here, is just exactly what it is. It's a pin that 3D prints for you. And this particular one, I'll link it below if it's still available on Amazon, but it was really cheap. It was only like 25 bucks. It was less than $30. And it does the job for me. I'm not trying to create something. I'm doing with it exactly what I'm going to show you right now. Now, as far as this goes, it is burning plastic, so it's kind of like sitting in front of your 3D printer while it's printing, and it's not really good. So I'm going to use a mask. I'm going to tell you this mask isn't exactly for this kind of setup. You should probably have like a respirator, but it's what I have, and it's better than nothing. And what I'm doing is just kind of oozing it in there so that I have something to actually fill off of. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it's not going to be perfect. But it is something strong to fill in there that I can put wood filler on top of and build off of. And this is just normal PLA that I had left over from a roll. And that's another thing that you can get this and find a use for, that extra PLA that maybe you don't have a binder to combine all your extras. Maybe you just got a bunch laying around, or maybe you just didn't want to bind it because it wasn't that much. Get this mask off. So now it doesn't look great, and who really cares, because we're gonna fill it over anyway. This does get extremely hot, just like your printer. I don't know right offhand, but I want to say it's like the 220 degrees Celsius, somewhere around there, 210. So be really careful, keep it away from your body. This particular one that I have does take a little bit to heat up, so keep that in mind. But it works perfect, and it's cheap, and especially if you're using it for this type of thing, and you're not trying to build anything off of it, it works really good. I have tried building a little bit off of it. I'm just not good at it, I don't think. I think it would probably do it, but I'm just not good at it. And again, too, it's just regular PLA, just coiled that I had extra left over on the roll and wasn't able to use it or didn't want to use it for something. And yeah, it'll do good. Now this will sand just like your print, so it's not going to be the easiest thing to sand. So if you notice, I showed on this camera down here, I didn't go all the way to the top. I just made a good reference to build off of, so there wasn't so much wood filler. All right, time to get back at it. So typically you don't need to put on this much wood filler. For me though, I wanted to make sure I didn't have any crevices in it, so, or any holes or gaps or anything like that. I didn't want anything, so I went to the extreme of going over it. I did have a couple of mountains from the actual 3D printing pen, but they eventually just sanded out just fine, and it came out really smooth, as you'll see in the finished product here. You can't even tell that it had 2 open slots in it at the end. Maybe you could tell if you decided to go up and look at it as harsh as you could and nitpick on things, but artists, you have liberties with art. So my first step, of course, was to go and put some filler primer on it after I did some light sanding on it. Again, filler primer, you can usually pick it up anywhere. I'm finding in South Carolina it's very difficult. I actually had to order this through Ace Hardware, and when I ordered it, I ordered like 6 bottles so that I didn't have to worry about it again for a little while. But when people would ask me where to get filler primer before, when I lived in California, I was just like, oh, to go down to Lowe's or anything like that, and Walmart carries it. But now I'm finding that some places it's kind of tough to find. So I'm right there with you now. I understand your troubles. After that, I did go and start a sanding. I did go and do a couple of sanding and repaints just to get it nice and smooth. And I did have a little issue again with those little humps from the 3D printing pen, but I worked it out with all the filler primer and the sanding. And then after I got about 3 coats done, I went into wet sanding, and that's where I really got my my smoothness down. And if you ever wet sand, I really love wet sanding because everything comes out good. Now here's what I'll tell you is I'm setting it out in the sun. After you wet sand with PLA, set it out in the sun. Just do it, because it's gonna bleed through and you're gonna get cracks and things like that. So just let it sit out for about at least a couple hours. Of course, don't let it sit in the heat of the summertime and make it melt, but let it dry out. Here I use some the forged paint that I've used in the past, and you may ask, why am I using this forged paint if I'm just going to paint over it? Well, with the forged paint, it has a great texture that I wanted to bring out underneath to make it look more like metal, so that it looks more like he painted over Beskar. So that was my whole goal in it. And I think with the texture underneath the paint that I painted it gives more life to it rather than just being a smooth piece, because anyone can make a smooth piece. And I think that the Beskar would probably show through with the texture. Now with this is a little bit of weathering technique that I've used in the past. This doesn't always work, I'm going to tell you, and sometimes it's really hard to get this hot glue off of here. But the upside is that when you pull it off, and I'll show it here at the end, it'll actually fray your paint a little bit and gives it more like something impacted the paint and tore up the paint. Now if you're using really thin PLA, it's going to melt your PLA. So be cautious of that. Use thicker walls if you're going to use this technique. I started off with a white and went into that flat white. I ended up using an actual spray can flat white, and as you can see, my helmet's sitting down there. That's what happens when you have clear coat still underneath your primer. So make sure you get all the clear coat off. I'll end up getting it off. I thought I got it all off, but it's still on there apparently. So it'll crack like that really bad. Now here I just went and outlined my design for what I wanted to do for the Punisher logo on here. And I just used a regular pen. Looking back on it now, I should have used a pencil. The reason is I had a little trouble getting the pen outline covered up with paint. And I don't know why it was having such a trouble with it, but I did have trouble with it. So use either a paint or an actual pencil. Here I started after I got all my white done. I went in and started doing all of my black. As you can see, I had to do a little bit different white on the left breast piece because I decided halfway through I wanted to do the eyes a little different. And I want to say I think this looks more like someone who would be the Punisher would paint his Beskar. He would use kind of paint and it would have this kind of overspray look, and that's what I was going for. So now is the time to go and take off that pesky glue that I put down. And like I said, it's not the easiest thing to pull off, but once you get it pulled off, it'll give you a really good look. At least to me, it gives a good look. Now, are things always smooth in damage? No, not at all. But that's why you go back over it with some weathering and things like that. I did end up doing the center little diamond piece, and I thought that would be a great addition for the actual nose cavity. And with this, I had already painted it white. I didn't use the actual center piece to go in there because I wanted it to have a little depth to it. And I just thought the centerpiece would kind of throw it off for the look that I was going for. Again, I'm not trying to go for an actual Boba Fett armor. I'm going for a Punisher Star Wars universe armor. So with this, it was just white paint was already on it and doing some shading with some black to kind of show that that center nasal cavity. Now it was on to some weathering. I pulled out my Tamiya weathering kits and just started going to town on different places. I did only stick to 3 colors. I used silver, a little bit of copper, some sand, and that was about it. I may have thrown a little gunmetal in there, but I actually took the silver and started kind of bleeding it all over the place. The reason with this was I wanted it to have a little scratched up kind of look, like he'd done some work already, and that was the look I was going for. With this Tamiya kit, you can actually just go and powder it out, smooth it out with your fingers, and it gives you a little bit more depth to it. Now to try on the armor, I don't have my actual under kit right now, yet anyway, so I just used some Gorilla Tape just to kind of tape it to my chest and stomach there, just to kind of show what it would kind of look like. And that's what I'm going for right there. I think with the helmet and all the other armor, I think it'll kind of showpiece. I'll have to line up the abs a little bit more, but I think it looks pretty decent. And then here we go with the finished product, just sitting on a stool here, just to kind of show you the work that I did on it. And I hope you enjoy it. So, and that's where I'm at, guys. I do have the armor completed as far as I'm concerned. I think it looks more like a Punisher style of what he might do if he was thrown into the Star Wars universe. So I think the next phase of this is I'm going to be kind of working on maybe the shoulders, the knees, I think, maybe the boot covers. I do have the files all sized up and everything already, and I think that'll probably be the next one, and then I'll get working on my wife's one. So until next time, we'll see you. Go out and build something. Have a great day.